We've seen a 40% decline in salmon farming operations in our territories over the last 4 years.
Tonight, First Nations in BC who are in favor of fish farms are on the Hill today.
The tribunal could provide recourse and redress by requiring government to change its conduct, its programs and policies, and how it interprets its own laws.
Inuit organizations asked the federal government for a human rights tribunal.
I want to cry. It's amazing.
And an Indigenous business in BC is taking off worldwide. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. First Nations in favor of the open net salmon fish farm industry in British Columbia were in Ottawa on Tuesday to lobby government officials against any plans to wind down the industry. APTN's Fraser Needham starts us off tonight with more.
Dallas Smith is a spokesperson with the Coalition of First Nations for Finfish Stewardship. He says an uncertain future for the open net salmon industry is negatively affecting the communities Finfish serves.
We've seen a 40% decline in salmon farming operations in our territories over the last 4 years. The unemployment that is rising in our territories has led us out here today. For far too long, activist voice have been the determining factor in how government has been making decisions on this necessary industry in our territories. But it's simply not just about salmon aquaculture alone. It's about ocean planning. It's about marine management.
Speaking at the same press conference, Isaiah Robinson of Kitasoo-Hay-Hay's Nation talks about what the industry means to his community.
This overall industry supports 99% employment rate within my community, and 51% of its overall economy is represented within the sector. It makes no sense to shut this industry down. There is no industry that can fill this space for us in such a remote community in British Columbia.
Opponents of open net salmon farms say the industry is depleting stocks by spreading parasites such as sea lice. In the 2019 election campaign, the Liberals pledged to phase out the fish farms by 2025 and instead move to land-based ones. Earlier this month, another group of First Nations was in Ottawa to pressure government officials to make good on this commitment. But on Tuesday, Finfish released its own report that says the industry is viable with the assistance of new technologies.
We need to continue to look at transitions to limit the impacts on wild salmon. The technology is changing on a regular basis, and one of the things we're doing is we're in discussions with British Columbia to talk about the infrastructure needs of bringing more technology forward. The lack of hydroelectricity in a lot of these remote communities is really a barrier to some of the new technologies being implemented.
Fisheries Minister Diane Laboutier has yet to release a promised draft transition plan for the industry. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
A cabin in the woods is turning out to be a flashpoint between First Nations and Métis in Northern Ontario. An Anishinaabe First Nation is taking legal action against the province of Ontario and 2 members of the Métis Nation of Ontario. They say the Métis have no hunting rights in their territory. Here's Annette Francis with that story.
John Turner is the second chief of the Tamiagama Anishinaabe. He knows the history of this territory like the back of his hand.
So when we crossed the Tamagami River, we left the traditional territory of Nipissing First Nation, and we come into Indaki Manan, our homeland, Tamagami Anishinaabe, and we're in the family territory of Shumshashkiwe.
So a harvesting cabin in their territory came as a surprise to Elder Alex Matthias. Matthias has been camping out here in a peaceful protest. He came across the cabin on Pond Lake 2.5 hours north of North Bay when it was still being built in 2018 and reported it to leadership.
What's going to happen if this guy gets away with it? Other people are be doing the same thing, and be cottage cabins all over our homelands, you know, and it's just not right for somebody to do things like that. I mean, I'm a status Indian. I can't go and build in Lake Nipissing. Leadership
tried to contact the Dekotu brothers about the build, but got no response. Councillor Kim Montry also questions how this happened.
Ontario government MNR knows There's no Métis community here. There's no Métis people. They've been dealing with us for 100 and some years. Since 1850, we've been trying to settle our land claim. It's still all outstanding.
In 2017, Ontario and the Métis Nation of Ontario recognized 6 new Métis communities. 2 of them, Abitibi and Ottawa, claimed harvesting rights in their territory called Dekimanan. In addition to the protests, they began legal action challenging the Ontario Métis harvesting agreements and the assertion of M&O rights in their homeland. According to their statement of claim filed on November 20th, the Métis harvesting agreement and the Pond Lake cabin infringe on the Temagami First Nations' inherent and constitutionally protected rights and undermine the Temagami's jurisdiction over Dekimanan.
This notion that an Indigenous group that we're unaware of can exercise rights in our territory, well, that doesn't make any sense to us at all, you know. And so it was pretty clear, because MNR was digging in their heels on this, that we have to go to court to make that case.
Temagami First Nation Chief Shelley Moore-Frappé says the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry has allowed the Métis to assert rights where historically there were never any Métis people. Moore-Frappé says what's even more concerning is how this whole issue connects with Bill C-53, the Métis Self-Government Act.
A major concern is the identity fraud that is happening, using our ancestors as their ancestors. So that is highly problematic. And as we can see right now, this is about land. I know that their president, Margaret Froh, keeps on speaking about how this is not about land, but as you can see today, that this is absolutely about land.
The Temagami statement of claim is asking for an injunction to stop the Decotus from using the Pond Lake cabin. APTN News contacted the Métis of Ontario. It responded with the same written statement it sent to media in September. The MNO stands by the Métis communities we represent and the recognition of their harvesting rights. The Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry has a process to allow the establishment of incidental cabins, and that the MNO is undergoing an internal review to determine if the structure meets that requirement. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry has not responded to our request for comment by airtime. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Thanks, Annette. Well, we'd like to hear what you think about this latest development between First Nations and the Métis Nation of Ontario. Here's how you can continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, you can go to our website. That's aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. 2 Inuit organizations are asking the federal government to establish an Indigenous human rights tribunal and ombudsman. Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami and Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated appeared before the Standing Senate Committee on Indigenous Peoples on Tuesday. The request comes from one of the calls for justice in the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Both organizations say better mechanisms are needed on the federal level to ensure the rights and safety of Inuit people, especially Inuit women. They say an Indigenous Human Rights Tribunal would be able to do that. Natan Obed speaks for ITK.
A tribunal could provide recourse and redress by requiring government to change its conduct, its programs and policies, and how it interprets its own laws. Accepting complaints from Indigenous persons themselves would provide a powerful lever for Indigenous individuals and collective rights holders to identify disputes and potential resolutions or remedies that are defined by Indigenous peoples rather than government policy-based experts.
Time to step aside for a quick break. Still to come, Manitoba's NDP government moves to make Orange Shirt Day a statutory holiday. Stick around. Welcome back. Manitoba may soon be able to reflect on the impact of residential schools with a paid day off. The provincial government is introducing a new bill that will recognize the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation as a statutory holiday. Sav Jonesa has more.
The Manitoba government has introduced a new bill that would see September 30th's National Day for Truth and Reconciliation as a statutory holiday for the province. If passed, it will join a small group of provinces and territories that have the day off to reflect on the history of residential schools. The current group that recognizes the day as a stat holiday is comprised of British Columbia, Prince Edward Island, and all 3 of the territories. The federal government made the day a stat holiday for its federally regulated employees in 2021. Numerous events take place across the country to commemorate and honor survivors of the genocidal institutions. Stat holidays ensure that more people are able to make time for learning about the past that still affects many today. Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Thanks, Sav. Whistler Film Festival is running all week, and this year they're also highlighting Indigenous podcasting with a panel on the importance of Indigenous storytelling. Kim Wheeler is a producer and a host of Auntie Up and other podcasts. We spoke with her earlier today. Kim, thanks for being with us. Can you tell us a bit about the panel that you're part of at the Whistler Film Festival?
Yeah, I'm going to be sitting on a panel with Chantal Bell Richard, who was a producer on Stolen Surviving St. Michael's. It was a podcast through Spotify with host Connie Walker, and that team won a Pulitzer and a Peabody Award, and we're going to be in conversation with Jordan Wheeler, who is a writer, a scriptwriter, a story editor, and my husband.
Yeah, no relation.
No relation.
Kim, you know, like you mentioned, Stolen was a huge award winner, and there's a lot of really great Indigenous podcasts out there. How would you say that podcasting has advanced Indigenous storytelling in the last few years?
Well, I think it's really been able to give us the microphone where we don't have to go through non-Indigenous I guess, editors or producers or people who are signing off on our stories. You know, if we're telling our stories through legacy media, there's always lots of kind of hoops you have to jump through, but podcasting allows us to put our stories right out into the world without any, without a colonial lens, I suppose.
And now you work on a few of them. Can you tell us a bit about those and why you think they're important?
Yeah, well, the first one I want to tell you about is called Auntie Up, and we're actually going to be launching a 3rd season this spring. We're going to start recording in the new year, and it's about Indigenous women talking about important stuff. I will not say the other word because we're on television, but that's basically it. And we have, it's all Indigenous women with Indigenous guests, and we talk about topics that are really important to us and who we are as Indigenous people, and really give that anti-world view out there. So lots of conversation that would, you know, probably take place in the kitchen table or over a glass of wine, and that's one of my favorites. I also am a producer on Canada Land Back with Karen Pugliese, who APTN audiences might be familiar with. And that one also looks at the issue of land back and what that means, as well as, you know, education back and children back and women back. I also do the Storytellers podcast for the Indigenous Screen Office too, where we center and focus on Indigenous filmmakers and how they tell their stories and what's important there as well.
All great podcasts. Happy to hear Auntie Up's coming back for another season. Kim, for those, you know, looking to get into podcasting, any advice for them?
Well, I always tell people that right here, this is a microphone. and it's also a speaker. So if you don't have fancy equipment and you want to tell your own story, you can start just by recording on your phone. Uploading to the web, there's different kinds of programs that you can use, and it's kind of all for free. So I think, like, that's really exciting. There's also programs through the National Screen Institute. There's funding through the Indigenous Screen Office and local arts councils. So there's a variety of ways that people can make their own shows and get their own voices out there. They don't have to wait for a broadcaster or a private radio group to pick you up. You can just go out there and start making your own stories and recording the stories right in your own community that are really important.
Good advice indeed. Kim, we'll leave it there, but great to see you. Thanks for taking some time for us, and have a great trip.
All right, thank you so much, Dennis. Take care.
Time for one more quick break. Still to come, an Indigenous-owned business in BC is an international success story.
When I ventured out with my 4-foot table, I never ever thought I would be doing something like this. I want to cry. It's amazing.
Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And Janice Gladish sent the view from her ride on the ferry as she was heading home to Quandra Island. Thanks for sharing with us all, Janice. If you have a picture you want to share, send that photo to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be featured as our next photo of the day. Now let's take a peek at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 0 with snow in Halifax and Charlottetown. -15 and flurries in Kuujjuaq, 8 below with snow in Nain. +1 in Montreal, -1 with snow for Val-d'Or. +3 and flurries in Sault Ste. Marie, snow and -1 in North Bay. +2 with snow in Thunder Bay, -2 and flurries in Sioux Lookout. -10 for God's Lake, 4 below with snow in Norway House. +2 in Winnipeg, Gimli and Dauphin. 0 for Regina, +1 in Saskatoon and North Battleford. 2 above with snow in Meadow Lake, -3 with snow in Buffalo Narrows. In northern Alberta, 2 below with snow in High Level and Fort Chipewyan. +3 in sunny skies in Edmonton, 1 above in Lethbridge. 6 in Vancouver, 3 in Kamloops. +1 with snow in Prince George, flurries and 0 for Smithers. -4 in Old Crow, 8 below in Whitehorse. -9 with snow in Yellowknife, 0 for Norman Wells. -11 in Sax Harbor, 7 below with snow in Paulatuck. -15 and snow in Chesterfield, 23 below in Cambridge Bay. -9 in Resolute, 1 below with snow in Igloolik. An entrepreneur from northern British Columbia has taken her business to new heights by showcasing artistic designs with a unique product line. APTN's Tina House joins us with more from Vancouver.
Thank you. I'm here with the very talented Amy Wilson from the Haisla Nation. Amy, this is incredible what you're doing here. Tell us a little bit about some of your artwork that you're selling and your beautiful pieces.
I promote Indigenous artists. I help single mothers with the beadwork. This is a wolf design by Josh Davidson from Haida Gwaii. He's one of my first artists that I purchased art from. And I just promote through clothing and accessories. I travel a lot, so very, very busy.
Amazing. You're expanding your business all the time. I mean, some of the products you're coming out with are just incredible.
Thank you.
You started out by beading. Now tell me about your story and how you started out with this.
When I was pregnant with my youngest son, I needed something to do, so I picked up a book and learned how to bead. And pretty soon I started selling it, and as I was pregnant, it made me some extra money, so I just kept that going. Then I started selling bead supplies. I started off with a 4-foot table and then just kept expanding. Like you said, just keep going, keep going.
Amazing.
Now I can fit a 30-foot space.
Incredible.
Yes.
Now these purses, these are new this year for your line?
I've had these going all year. I started off with these ones. Now I have these bigger ones and the crossbody purses. These ones are my favorite. They clip down, they have lots of pockets. They're crossbody purses, so hands-free.
Wow, I mean this piece right here is stunning. This red and black purse here. Tell us a little bit more about that artist in particular.
This one is my dad, Lewis's. It was one of the first ones that I got from him. Well, the only one I got from him, actually, and it's called the Six Crest. It's got eagle, raven, killer whale, wolf, beaver, and man. I call it Unity. It was one of my first pieces, and it's my logo.
Beautiful. And of course your signature earrings here, I mean these are just absolutely stunning. I know a lot of my colleagues at APTN are now sporting these, as well as many people. In fact, your stuff has now gone around the world. Amy, how does it make you feel to see your products around the world now?
I want to cry. It's amazing. When I ventured out with my 4-foot table, I never ever thought I would be doing something like this. I love it.
Well, congratulations on all your success, and I cannot wait to see what you come up with next. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you so much.
Always good to see you, Amy.
Yes,
thank you. Back to you in studio.
Thanks, Tina and Amy. Well, Emily Mandamin is having quite a year. The Anishinaabe basketball player has just partnered with the Toronto Raptors and the Toronto Transit Commission on a campaign to highlight Indigenous athletes. Earlier this year, she teamed up with Ontario Lottery and Gaming and NBA Canada on another campaign that led to the refurbishing of the basketball court in her home of Iskatay Wizagigan 39, Independent First Nation.
And for me, the basketball court was always a safe space. Growing up in the community, there's a lot of different things that we deal with, whether that's substance abuse, mental health issues, poverty rates. And so I found myself at the basketball court at a young age, looking for a better lifestyle and a way to express myself as a young girl. And a lot of my older cousins were there playing basketball late at night, you know, trying to find a better way out and just spending time in a positive way. And so I think there was a lot of memories made there, and so I think that was kind of the biggest thing was, you know, fixing up this basketball court for the generations to come after so they could also have a place to play.
And you can hear much more about Emily's journey in about 90 seconds time. That's when she'll be our guest on Face to Face. We're all out of time for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. Of course, for news anytime, you can visit our website. That's aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward, Marcy Miigwech. Thanks for being with us. Stick around. Face to Face is up next. Have a good night.